Hello, students. Welcome to Easy Elimu Learning Simplified. I am your teacher, Mr. Stanley Umbogo. So, this is another exciting episode, dear students, that we have, and I'd like us to look at again another topic in grammar, that is Form 3 work: transitive and intransitive verbs. Transitive and intransitive verbs. So before we get to look at what transitive and intransitive verbs are, dear students, let us remind ourselves, or I assume that we all know, but let us just remind ourselves what verbs are. So remember that verbs are words that are used in sentences to indicate or show an action. So sometimes they are normally defined as, doing words. Doing words. They are called doing words because they indicate or they show an action. Now, back to transitive and intransitive verbs. So I'll start by looking at the first one, that is transitive verbs. So dear students, when we're talking about transitive verbs, these are verbs that in sentences talks about an action, that have a direct object to receive it. I'm repeating. Transitive verbs in a sentence talks about an action. It talks about an action that have a direct object to receive it. So remember, again, there is a term that we are coming across, that is the word object. So object in in English is the receiver of an action. And remember, a subject is the doer. The subject in a sentence or in English is the doer of an action. So the object becomes the receiver. So in a nutshell, it is an action verb that expresses a doable activity. So again, talking about action verbs, remember again in Form 1, there was a topic about the active verbs and the stative verbs. So transitive verbs are action verbs that express an activity or activities that are doable. So examples of some of these verbs we have is eat, jump, click, etc., etc. So just like I said, the verbs must have a direct object that is receiving the action. So a direct object, just like we said, is the receiver of an action. So if something or someone receives an action, it becomes a direct object. So we are also told that an indirect object can also be there, but it precedes the direct object. Now, there are some sentences that we have here, and I'd like us to look at them and say whether the verbs in them have direct objects or not. So what we are trying to look at here, dear students, is the what? The receiver of the action. The receiver of the action that we have in these sentences. So remember, the subject is the doer, then the object becomes the receiver. So the instruction here requires us to study the sentences very well and say whether the verbs that are used have direct objects. So the first one, Joan bought him a handkerchief. Joan bought him a handkerchief. The second sentence that we have, the man love his children. The man love his children. Then the third sentence, Collins drew the picture. Collins drew the picture. So looking at the three sentences that we have, let me start by looking at the first one. That is John bought him handkerchief. So the action verb that we have in the first sentence is bought. Then the subject or the doer of the action in the sentence is Joanne. Then there is the receiver of an action that is indicated using the pronoun him. Then again, looking at the second sentence, the man loves his children, there is the subject, that is the doer of the action, which is the man. Then we also have an action verb, that is love. Then we also have now the receiver or the direct object that we are required to identify, which is his children. So again, looking at the third sentence, Collins drew the picture. So we have the subject Collins, then the action verb drew, then there is the direct object that is now a sentence that has a verb with a direct object will take the formation subject plus verb plus object. Subject, verb, object, in that order. So how about we look at intransitive verbs? Talking about intransitive verbs, these are actions that do not have direct objects to receive them. So the subject does the action, but it does not affect anyone or anything. So we do not have the receiver of the action when using intransitive or when using verbs intransitively. So intransitive verbs only contain the subject and the verb as seen in the sentences that we have below. So in the first sentence, there is the verb fell. So the snow fell yesterday. So looking at that sentence, we do not have a direct object. So there is nothing, completely nothing that receives the action. So the second sentence, we only have the subject and the verb. They failed. They failed. So the next one, she is sleeping. She is sleeping. Then lastly, they work hard. They work hard. So another thing that is also important to note, dear students, is that intransitive verbs can sometimes be followed by a complement. So the complement is usually an adjective or an adverb, which give information about time, manner, frequency, or place. So if you look at the sentences that we have below, there is the athletes ran fast. The second sentence, the food tastes insipid. Then lastly, the rain rains every morning. So those verbs, that is in the three sentences above, the actions or states denoted by the verbs rain, taste, and rains are represented as remaining in the subjects, athletes, food, and rain, respectively, in the above sentences, and not as passing over to an object. So the three verbs do not require objects to complete the sense. So they also qualify to be called intransitive verbs. So just to summarize, an intransitive verb, dear students, is one that does not require an object to complete the sense. They do not require an object to complete the sense. But remember, when we are looking at the transitive verbs, we are able to note to notice that they have, direct objects that receive the actions. And again, you should also have in mind that some verbs are used both as transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. So these are verbs that can take the two forms. So I have two examples in sentences. So the verb that we have is flies. So in the first sentence, flies has been used intransitively. So the bird flies. There is only the subject and the verb. There is no direct object or receiver of the action. So the second sentence, the boy flies his kite. So again, we've used the same verb, flies, but now transitively, because in the second sentence, there is a direct object that receives the action. So it is also important, dear students, to note that a verb can be described as transitive or intransitive based on whether it requires an object to express a complete thought or not. So a transitive verb is one that only makes sense if it exacts its action on an object, while an intransitive verb will make sense without one. So that is the difference. That is just a summary of everything that we've learned in the session, dear students. I'd like to thank you for staying tuned till the end, and remember to always keep it easy, Alimo. Until next time, bye.